So today I'm going to be talking about dialogical self theory, DST, and some of its implications for research. I'll start with a brief history piece and then dive right into a few examples of how one could utilize this technique. If we take a look at psychology's history, we have conceptualized the self as being a singular entity, or a static process. Sure, we have the conscious and unconscious planes, but I think that for a long time we have thought that underneath all our memories and cognitive processes that there's this core self that, for lack of a better words, colors our experience, both internally and externally. Wolstein would say that this core self contains personality traits and characteristics regardless of context. You know, the access to stuff that is just part of who we are. The concept of the self morphed somewhat in the 1950s with Winnicott's true and false self states, Sullivan's good me versus bad me, and the idea of repositioning. Here one could be the result of a combination of positions, and the collected, or what was once thought of as core beliefs, were then the result of differing vantage points, rather than a singular one. Within the last 10 years or so, Hermans and others have developed many ideas for how these differing I positions, or voices, are in constant dialogue with each other. Multiplicity, more or less. None of them, in my opinion, come even close to the complexity of metaphorically describing the self. However, they do expose very interesting interpretation of internal processes. Well, here's an example that was given in an article by Ball and Milne related to consumer preferences. And so let's say, look at your ideas about donuts. Seems silly, but check this out. So ultimately, you decide that donuts are bad, right? Well, why? DST would say something like, your healthy self believes that they make you fat, and your unhealthy self believes that they taste good. In certain contexts, like with one group of friends, your healthy voice will be more influential, while with your weed-smoking artist friends, your unhealthy voice takes the lead. This is just one fairly simple example. However, like I said earlier, the unique combination of self-states becomes virtually limitless because it takes into consideration all of the unique combinations that we have experienced and puts it into another unique aspect of context. How is this useful? Well, if we were able to discern the differing self-states within an individual, perhaps it would be possible to lessen certain voices and strengthen others, like muffling a depressed self-state and strengthening a social self-state. I mean, essentially, if you reframe this idea, it is the same thing you are doing in CBT or any other therapy, really, minus the use of self-states as a focus. I could go on and on about this, so for now, let's just say that the self, multiple or not, is super complex, and that by conceptualizing the self through the DST lens, albeit far from complete, is a somewhat richer interpretation than we've had previously. How am I going to look at something like this for a research project? Well, I thought it might be interesting to investigate juxtaposed voices. Perhaps differing voices actually produce differing patterns of speech. This would be supported somewhat by the idea of dissociative identity disorder, or the variation of speech for a given mood state. Just think how you yourself sound in different contexts, and then find the juxtaposed states. For this project, I am going to look at audio recordings of an interview that discusses the conceptions of health. Much like the donut example, I am hoping to find distinct voices in the participants' responses. Okay, so I'm going to ask you 4 questions, okay? Okay, the first question is, what does it mean to you to be healthy?
To not eat nothing.
To not eat nothing?
To not eat bad stuff.
Okay. And what does it mean to be unhealthy?
Makes you sick.
Okay. Next question. What does it mean when you mean, like, what kind of foods are unhealthy? Okay. What kind of foods are healthy?
Roast, mac and cheese, spaghetti.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for your time. Recorded audio looks like this. Here we see the interview that was just conducted. If we chop this thing up and organize it by times participant talked about healthy things and times participants talked about unhealthy things, we could then compare speech patterns based on amplitude, words per minute, pitch, and in a variety of other ways as well. Perhaps there would be a difference. If so, then what? Well, this is where I get excited and then immediately discouraged. If this could be used to raise awareness in the participant, perhaps if we taught them how to speak in a way that better resembles the healthy voice and better rejects the unhealthy voice, they would indeed become more healthy. Like if you said, if you talk slower, louder, and listen to music in the key of F, that would stimulate your healthy voice. There is some pretty interesting stuff out there on biofeedback, so who knows. I'm discouraged, however, because I feel results would be only valid for that particular individual. Since context is a unique combination of things, it'd be hard to discern that out. In other words, what works for one person probably doesn't work for another. Anyway, that's enough out of me. I hope this was helpful and that it provides some food for thought.